Oh, happy Monday, everyone. You're in great company as always. I'm Rae Bonney, and with you for the next hour. My show today, as always, is about people. We recognise here that it really is okay to not be okay, so turn up your radio. Now today, it's the 9th day of October, hurtling our way towards the silly season, and of course, we are just a nose away from Melbourne's prestigious Spring Racing Carnival. And last week I spoke with Adam Garroni. Adam's the co-founder and long-time CEO of the Movember Foundation, which is now one of the most innovative and impactful charities created this millennium, working to change, literally and figuratively, the face of men's health. Did you know that Movember has funded 1,200 men's health programs in 21 countries, achieving significant breakthroughs in the way prostate and testicular cancer is diagnosed and treated. And the movement is also focused on male suicide, which kills at least one man every minute of every day. So if you missed out, take a listen on my brand new YouTube channel. That's Rae Bonney YouTube. Just type that in. Anyway, my guest today, for the first time in weeks, is actually joining me live in the studio. Rob Hartnett is an international award-winning sales performance and leadership specialist. He's accomplished many great things during his stellar career, contributing to the success of many well-known organisations, masterminding innovative startups, not to mention publishing 3 books and gracing a plethora of media platforms on the subject of top-line business performance. And today is not without exception here at the studios at 94.1 FM 3WBC. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hey, Ray, how you going?
Good. How did I go with that intro?
That was really long, especially the length of the radio station name. That was long.
Right. Okay.
Mine wasn't long enough, frankly.
You've got another 50... I can't do maths. I think it's 54 minutes to go where it's all about you.
It is all about me, and we should probably go over time on that basis.
Yes, I don't think Ken Lyons will be very happy about that coming up on his health show. Now, Rob, we have known of each other for 27 years, although the gap between 27 years and now, there hasn't been a lot of activity.
There hasn't been. There should have been, but there hasn't been.
Doesn't matter though, does it?
No, we're here now and it's happening.
Well, the other day I was sitting there thinking, who would I like to have on my show? And I thought, your name just popped into my head. He's interesting. Yeah. He's got something to say, and he's got a sense of humour as well. Now, we met 27 years ago through the yacht racing industry.
We did.
When I was working in the media, and the last time I worked in the media, and you, of course, were skippering a boat.
Yeah, a variety of boats. I can't remember which one at the time, but was there a variety of boats back then? That's probably right.
And we were dabbling around the Melbourne to Devonport, Melbourne to Hobart, and I think the Hamilton Island yacht race as well.
There was a bunch going on.
Yes.
It still is. It's still a great sport.
And I was a crazy 22-year-old redhead, never had anything to do with the media before, but it was a very memorable time of my life. And yep.
Absolutely. It was a heady time, wasn't it? I guess the days where media and sailing were actually coming together, and now it's quite a big sport. So you were probably way ahead of your time, to be honest.
I was, but we've come in leaps and bounds, haven't we? Even in terms of technology and how we produce media, and how we report it and how we consume it is very different now as well. And you've taken a bit of a back step out of yacht racing, haven't you?
In recent times, sailing? Just recently, last couple of years, I've got more into cycling. But it's those lycra-clad lads. I thought I'd never be. I didn't think I'd ever don lycra and be on a road bike. Never thought I'd do it, but I just love it, and it's a passion, and it's a full circle. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting sport, and one I've become to really get very passionate.
Do you have a range of costumes, or?
I have a range of costumes. Yeah, I do. In fact, we do have much lycra, and it's once you get into the sport, it's very hard. You end up with more bikes than you should have. But although the golden rule, I'm told, Ray, is that the amount of bikes you should have is N+1. Where N equals the amount of bikes you already have.
That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, so just keep buying them, basically.
What does Lisa say about that, your beautiful wife?
She says just build a bigger shed.
Good on her. She's always been like that.
She's very supportive.
You've been together since you were kids.
Yeah, we've been together. Well, it's not we're kids, but certainly 26 years or so.
Yes.
Yeah, so 26 years or so. We count marriage after that. But it's been a great long time, and she's hugely supportive. I couldn't do the sailing, I couldn't do the cycling or the motorcycles, all the crazy things I do without her. And she's also a dedicated petrol head, which absolutely helps.
And a very accomplished photographer as well. Now, before we head into your trajectory and pull apart what it's like being a leader in your field, I also noticed that you recently, and this is segueing back into Movember, that you and your son Ben recently did the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is very connected to Movember, all about men and men's health.
Yeah, we've done the DGR for the last 3 years.
Yes.
So Ben and I have done it for the last couple of years, riding out of Melbourne. People who have ever done the ride, we tend to be fairly prominent because we're both wearing our old school uniforms or old school blazers.
Your Scotch college.
We wear our ties and blazers, which we get into, and we hoon around the streets, and it's a lot of fun. The DGR is a great idea. I love the whole concept of it. I love how it's gone global, starting in Australia, and it's gone global. And it's a great thing where people dress up dapper, if you haven't seen it, and ride sort of classic or styled motorcycles. And it's just a great way to raise this really important awareness for a great cause.
Yes.
And so Ben and I have done, and Ben's my oldest of my three boys. And so the last couple of years is when he's had his license, so he couldn't do it any earlier.
Yes.
He rode on the back once with me, and then the last 2 times we've done it together.
And that's fabulous also, Rob, that, raising awareness around men's issues, which is quite prominent on my show here, that, you're raising boys as well to be very aware of, what it feels like being a man, but also what some of these common issues are around, not only around mental health, but also physical health and well-being. Also,
it's huge. It's just and you can get caught up in an entrepreneurial life like I'm in, where you're traveling and you're working really hard and you think about a lot of others, and you've got people close to home where you can make a lot of assumptions, and that's the biggest mistake you can do, is make assumptions that it's all okay. You need to be checking in and getting close, and it's interesting. One of the bikes we actually ride in the DGR was a bike that myself and the two of the boys, Finn, who's my middle one, especially, and Ben, put together. So we built that bike as a kind of a therapy thing, actually, when Ben was doing VCE, and it can get pretty intense doing VCE in any family.
Yes.
And I thought, what can we do that's off social media that takes him away from the books a little bit? And there was a bike we'd been gifted by a very dear friend who'd passed away. And we'd had the bike in storage for maybe 10 years, and he always spoke about a bike he wanted to build before he passed away. And so we basically took on the task of transforming this bike into the bike that he always wanted. And that was a great task. It was a lot of fun to do, and it was just us in the workshop and just pulling it apart. We got to a certain point where we're not mechanics, Ray. We're good at design. We know what we want, and we're good at pulling it apart. And then we partnered with some guys, Midlife Cycles, in fact, in Richmond, the great guys, who helped us put it together and build a dream that we now have. So it was a really good story in that bike as well.
That is what's the bike doing now?
The bike is still ridden regularly. It's It was
sounds like a horse.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like that, doesn't it? We put it all together, and it was built, and rebuilt. And what's exciting, probably in more recent times, the bike was written by a guy who gifted it to us, a guy called John Jarrett, or Jack Jarrett. So we named the bike the JJ Special. And unbeknownst to us, the guys at Midlife Cycles actually had logos made up of JJ Special, and they had the stickers put on the bike when we finally picked it up, which was just such a touch they didn't need to do, but they kind of loved the whole story. And he was a World War II veteran. He was a survivor of Japanese war crimes and a whole lot of things. And he was a mentor to me from a very young age, and then became a mentor to my boys when they were racing motorcycles and involved in all that scene. And he was a lovely guy. And the last story I will tell you about the bike, when I had to get it registered, as it was much modified, was going to the Vic Roads, not knowing if they'd pass it or not. The Vic Roads people actually falling in love with the bike, and the lady in there who remained nameless going through the number plates until she could find one with JJ on it, and handing it over saying, "We never do this, don't tell anyone." And we were able to get actual registration plates with the JJ on the back. So it's kind of a special little bike.
What a fantastic story. I wasn't expecting that, but just listening to all of those little gems in there, how beautiful people are. When you go that little moment more, that little piece, that little extra mile, what that actually means to people and human beings. We're full of it.
Yeah.
And these stories aren't told enough. So thanks for sharing that with us, because it really does create a great platform for what we're going to be talking about today. And so going back to 27 years ago, with your role being an international sales performance and leadership specialist, you always weren't one of those. Now, was that an accidental journey, or was that something that was kind of in the back of your mind?
It's in the back of my mind. I've always loved business, so I've had a passion for business and a curiosity for people, Ray. It's a curiosity for business. So if I meet a business owner, I just want to know how they did what they did, how they do what they do, and a bit like you, is you're a great presenter and interviewer because you're interested, right? And so a lot of people say to me, "What's the secret of sales, Rob? Can you sum it up in 2 words?" Well, actually, I can. Be interested and be interesting.
Yes.
So if you can do that, you will have a great, successful career in sales. Just be interested in people and be an interesting person yourself. And if you can work on those 2 things, and they're not easy. Some come more naturally to people. Other times you need to bring that out. But those 2 things always interested me. I did accounting, so I'm an accountant by profession. So by trade,
did you
I'm
almost
an accountant.
die of boredom?
Yeah, I'm an accountant. I started my career at KPMG. I worked for Rio Tinto for a while in Kraft Foods and headed up treasury and taxation at a fairly young age at Kraft. But accounting wasn't for me. It was I enjoyed. If you're ever at a crossroads and you don't know what course to do accounting, because you can always use business in your career at some point. You'll need to understand.
You don't have to go that far and do accounting. Can't you just do a general business course?
Well, a general business course is fine. But yeah, if you're in doubt, do a business course of some sort.
Go and do drama.
Until you work it out, then do drama. If you get your passion early, which I didn't, then, as I said, do business. If you've got your passion early, go do it. In fact, and that's been, I think, a wonderful thing with my children, watching and looking for their passions. And as a parent, I think it's one of your best jobs you can do is be observant of passions, because you'll see them before your kids will. Because if you've been around and you know what you're looking for, you'll start to see it and you can help direct traffic. Didn't start out doing the sales and marketing thing. Always interested in that side of things, but yeah, I was an accountant before I started doing that, and then I just got into it through opportunities.
Because back in those days, we didn't need a degree to segue into.
No. These days, and look, really today though, there's many things you can do. As long as I've got kind of a formula for world class and formula for doing anything, and it's pretty successful. And so that formula, if you follow that formula, but you have to follow the four pieces of it, otherwise it doesn't work. But if you follow that formula, you can pretty much do anything you want.
Shall we talk about that now?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it.
Because I like what you said before about being interested and interesting, because providing your audience the feeling of being cared for and the feeling of being validated and acknowledged, what that does for the human condition is engage it. Yeah. Straight up. But bad manners, bad vocabulary.
Yes.
And I was speaking to somebody the other day and they asked me to tell them a story, one of my stories. Right. And I started telling the story and I could see their gaze shift. I'm not sure if I was actually really excruciatingly boring. Yeah. But straight away I just shut down and went, not telling you my story, because that's precious. And you completely just hurt me and invalidated me. So I did not continue. But that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. And so you definitely want to have, you can feel that, because they are important stories, and you don't want to release them to kind of anybody, really, especially if they're important to you and they connect to you. But, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right, it's a great line from one of my mentors, John Maxwell, and John is the leadership quote guru. He's unbelievable, but that's one of his best ones. He's got a number of them, but that's an important one, which most leaders in business and in anywhere forget.
Can you just say that again, please?
Yeah, so no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Great. I've got that. May I use it?
You got it?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's such an important one, and we make assumptions that my team think that I care. They know I like them. I know I care. So let me just tell you what we're doing here. And no, hang on a second. You just made a huge assumption. And that's why so many things fail, because especially if you're leading teams, which is a slightly different tangent, but if you're leading teams, people make the assumption that everyone knows where you're going and what you're doing. And they always go with the what, and no one does the why. Start with the why. Why are we doing this? If everyone understands the why, the what becomes very easy. It actually then you start moving away from risk and reward and how much you're going to pay me and compensation, because no one actually understands the why or the lack of sense of urgency. So, because
people without purpose and objective are quite dangerous, really, to themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fairly common. I mean, the reality is that most people who work in the corporate life, and this has been brought out by people like Forbes and others, find out that most people in the morning get up and accept their life, not lead their life. Right? And so you're starting to now see, I think this is it's a really interesting time of things like the gig economy coming, where people are actually questioning, what am I actually doing? Am I enjoying this? Can I do something different? And now people are saying, you know what, I think I can contract. I think I could subcontract.
Could you please just go back and tell me what the gig economy...
Oh, the gig economy, yeah. Yes. So you know a gig in terms of a band?
Oh, I thought you meant gig as in gigabyte.
No, gig as in... Oh, you're such a nerd. Oh, my God, I can't believe you brought that up. it's crazy you would say that.
I'm not even a nerd.
Nerd alert. Rae Bonney. Nerd alert. That's it. What's your technology show? That on tonight? Okay. I'll dial into your technology show.
No, that would be Phil Edwards and Geeks Interrupted.
Oh, well, you'll be a
Andy
guest
Bloom.
on that. You're a guest on that. You can start coding, girlfriend. So the gig economy is like a gig as in a music gig.
Yeah.
And so it's around saying, well, maybe I don't need to work this full-time job. Maybe I can work 3 jobs. Maybe I can get on a freelancer or Elance or one of those type programs and start with, actually, what do I want? Where do I want to work? How do I want to work? What hours do I want to work? Who do I want to work for? And am I working on jobs that I've got some passion around? Am I doing things that I want to go and do? There's even an article in The Age, believe it or not, on a lady in Sydney who's actually doing career counselling, helping people do this. Right. And
because we would call that a slash career.
Yeah, like a slashy career. But you're actually starting now to say, how can I transition? Because a lot of people want to do it, but they feel they need to go from full-time employment to their own job or their own business. And that is I've done it, right? And it's difficult because I failed it the first time, right? I didn't make it work.
Would you say you failed, or did you just learn a whole lot of stuff that you took into the next moment?
I just made the assumptions that I could start it up quicker than I could.
When was that, Rob? What year was that?
It would have been, so I'd done a lot of work at Apple. I'd worked at Apple, worked at HP, and I'd done a couple of internet startups.
I think you were with HP when I first met you.
Yep. So I was 5 years or so with HP, a fantastic company and just a great company for leadership and what they do. And then I worked at a couple of internet startups. And it was just after that I thought, I can't do my own thing. I was doing a lot of speaking. So it was around where I'd done my first book, Fast Times Ahead, doing a lot of speaking gigs, a lot of things going on, doing a bit of consulting here and there. And I thought, I'm going to do my own thing. And it just wasn't, I just couldn't get it going fast enough.
Yes.
But what was really interesting, I read a great quote and someone said, when you go out on your own and you become an entrepreneur or you go out on your own, you want to do your own thing, even if you go back and do a full-time job for a while, you do not go back the same.
No.
You go back as an entrepreneur going, this is on my journey to my next, to getting it right.
Yes.
And so you go back with a completely different mindset. When I read that, I didn't go back with a sense of I tried it and failed. I went back, I had to go. I'm on the journey. This is part of the stepping stone. So what was I missing? What bit did I need?
I think people think when things don't turn out like they imagined that equals failure.
It's so true. Or not what they imagined even. It's what they've seen other people do.
Yes.
And of course the media loves a good success story. And so, and I think that's part of there's a downside to social media. I mean, I'm on a lot of platforms, as you know, so I love it.
Yes.
But there's a lot of downside to it too, that you can go, oh my God, I'm not successful enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not doing this enough. It's not so perfect enough. And so you've got to moderate that with the fact that you experiencing what you do and you are who you are, and you can only do your best when you're making those transitions. And there's never a perfect time.
No, but going with your gut also. And I did the same thing as you did, and I jumped knowing that the safety net would probably appear somewhere. Didn't know where it was going to appear from. Yeah. But like I went out with this idea of what my consultancy was going to be like, but I forgot that bit where I need to be highly engaged with lots of people all the time.
Yes.
And that's the thing I learned about myself, or endorsed in myself, that then I had to go halfway back and re-engage in that former life, but maintain and retain the new one at the same time. And so, I think I've collected now officially about 7 separate jobs. So, but it's working.
I would say that, yourself definitely, and me to a certain extent, I've had about 4 career changes. We're pioneers. That is what, if you're a millennial now, you're in 20s or even your 30s now, that's what the future is going to be like.
Yes.
I think it's exciting that you can have, because you didn't do that. Our parents didn't do that. Our grandparents definitely didn't do that.
But I think the risk focus has shifted though, because back in that generation, risk was when you didn't have that one solid job with a reputable organisation.
Yeah.
Whereas now risk means if you only have one occupation, you are very, very vulnerable.
You are vulnerable, yes. Absolutely. So now it's reflected upon. You've done different things. You've got different skill sets that you can bring to bear. So anything you have, and I think that's the really important thing. People forget that what they've done in their careers can be used in their next job, their next gig, their next whatever it happens to be. And organisations just look through in tunnel vision, in my view. When someone comes into work for them, we don't take enough time to really understand that person. Yes, they got through the interview and they're there for their 3 months, and then it's moving on from there. But who are they really? What are the other skill sets they can bring to bear on this organisation? And I don't think corporations, especially, can really maximise the value of their people. They just don't do it.
No. and that's the space I work in terms of not putting all of the responsibility on leadership, however, creating those environments that support how people are feeling and supporting the flourishing and development of people. And that, I guess, sits with leadership, because that's where the decisions are made about that culture and environment.
Well, it should be, but the problem is we have just such a huge leadership vacuum, in my view, in this country, both politically and in corporate world. We've got a lot of managers, right? No
Mr. Manager.
We've got a lot of managers.
Because that's what everyone wants to be, don't they? What do you want to be? A manager?
Yeah, I don't want to be a manager.
I wouldn't want to be a manager.
You want to be a leader, because a leader is nothing about job titles. It's amazing how many people in a room I'll get with a workshop and go, how many leaders we got here? And no one puts their hand up.
Well, would you? My idea is that leadership is a philosophy, not an action.
Well, leadership's situational. Right, it's a verb, not a noun. It's a doing thing. Like leadership is what we do. It's nothing to do with job titles.
No.
That can be your baseline. Your level one of leadership is I've got a better title to you. I can fire you, so you better do it. So that's kind of level one. Yes. And sometimes we have to go along with that. But the real leaders are the ones. If you think about anyone who's a leader, they're always someone who adds value. And leaders add value to others first.
But also inspire and motivate and innovate as well. I think innovation it's always been a key component, I think, of success. It's not we see it as this new thing now. Yeah. Innovation and sustainability.
It's not. It's always, innovation has always been there. You cannot cost cut your way to the top.
No.
And you're seeing more. And what's happening is you're seeing this conservative thing in companies where look at how many ex-CFOs, ex-accountants are actually running companies.
Yes.
Ain't much innovation going on there. I can tell you that much, because that's not what accountants and CFOs typically do. So unless they surround themselves with good innovators, and the best do, I might add.
And listen to them.
And listen to them. But it's about empowering the culture to allow innovation. So you don't need to be innovating yourself as a leader, but you've got to have a culture of innovation. And that's a culture of failure, by the way, because innovation is failure. You've got to try, and it might not work, right? Yes. So you might move on to the next one, but your culture's got to say, that's okay to do that. Let's move on. Let's not lose too much. In fact, I was talking to a business leader the other day. It's not a huge business, but it's still a substantial one. And here's a great philosophy. He says, we spend 80% of our time on run rate profitable business, and we spend 20% on at-risk, break even, may even go with a bit of a loss, just to experiment and push our customers to challenge themselves, and so they challenge us back the other way. I thought that was really interesting. Like he spends 20% on projects so I don't get left behind, and we're innovating. Yes,
but whilst we're not maybe again achieving the outcomes we expected through that research or whatever it might be, there is still a learning piece in there that can be transferred into the next research phase. And I think because that instant gratification, which is so present in a lot of our communities, is that if it doesn't work the first time, we bin it. Yeah. And actually Adam Garoni from Movember was talking about this last week on the show, that the amount of research that Movember spend, the $800 million that they've raised so far on, much of that doesn't come to fruition. But it's not failure, because we don't need to be recreating the wheel and starting at ground zero every single time. Yeah. And I think I love moving away from that term failure. So what did we learn, and what can we take forward?
Yeah. John Maxwell had another great quote when I was with him last year in the US, and he said, what would you be prepared to do knowing you would fail, but you would learn a lot?
Yeah.
And to me, I just said I was doing some cycling. So I did the World Master Games in Auckland in cycling. Yes. And the last time I did the World Master Games was in Sydney when I was sailing. So I kind of put this kind of really hard timeline on myself to actually change sports and do it. And that was the perfect example. I knew I wasn't going to win. I wasn't going to win in my age group.
Yes.
But I really wanted to do it. So I knew I was going to fail, if you will, at winning. But I knew I would learn a tremendous amount. And that's exactly what happened.
When was that, Rob?
That was April this year.
Oh, right. How did you go?
Yeah, so I ended up not mid-fleets, that's sailing, but it's a mid-group, I guess, in terms of in my age group. Yeah, so it was wind and rain in Auckland, sunny Auckland, but great fun, and great fun to do. And when I got over there, all the master cyclists, they were so set up and everyone was so professional. My wife Lisa said to me, are you really sure we're at the right event? Because I just took my bike over there and I was getting ready, and all these guys were on wind trainers and had their teams there and getting sorted out. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I am, but I don't think my preparation is as good, albeit I was well prepared by a fantastic coach and a team.
Yes.
But I learned so much in such a short space of time, like the 48 hours or so I was in New Zealand. Learned so much more. That's paying off now. So, but the thing was, I knew I would fail, yet I knew I would learn a lot. And that's I love that philosophy. What would you do? And I challenge people to think about that a lot. What would you do that knowing you would fail, but you will learn a lot?
Yes. Well, I always come from a platform, what can I do rather than what can't I do?
Yeah.
So, and that's one of my issues that chocks up all of my time is, can you do this race? Yeah, sure I can. And then I'll work out how I'm going to do it next.
Yes.
Or how I'm going to fit it in. Never will I consider, would I, should I, could I? It's always yes first and then work it out later. And I think that, that's not setting myself up for failure in my mind. It's setting myself up for learning.
It does. Well, you being the personality you are and knowing you've got to watch yourself, because I think one of the things you could learn is the power of the elegant no. Right?
That is usually an F and an O, and it's 2 words for me.
It's too hard. It's like, elegantly, how can I maybe not do that because it's not where I'm going or not aligned to what I'm doing, and I won't do it properly. I'll let someone down. So I believe in the can. You absolutely take on things, be challenged, do things that are differently. But sometimes you can't take on everything because we're still only human. Yeah,
that's right. And look, there are times when I'm literally not in that part of the world that it can't happen.
You can't
so
do it.
There's a reason. But, I think that natural curiosity and that, natural want to be involved, the FOMO, fear of missing out, probably resides quite strongly in me.
Yeah.
But in you as well. And, what you're describing too is that it's not about being fearless as much as it is inquisitive, isn't it?
Well, it's what they call FOMO.
Yeah, which I just said.
Fear of missing out.
Well, you're not just listening to me, Rob.
I was.
Not.
But you didn't say it was FOMO. I just did the acronym.
I'll play the recording back to you later, and we'll check that. Not that we're splitting hairs.
You didn't say that.
I did. Phone in anyone that's listening. By the way,
do you know FOMO is actually a Thai restaurant in Burke Street in Melbourne? That's what I thought FOMO was for a good amount of time.
Because we're of that generation.
Yeah, it's still there, FOMO.
Well, do you know what, Rob? We're 30 minutes into the show, and time to have a little break so we can collect ourselves and come back. And this show has taken on all legs. I do write a pretty loose structure, and we've gone off on all tangents, but I'm loving this conversation.
But I'll keep us back on. Don't worry, listeners. I'll keep us on track. I know Ray's completely lost. You should see the expression on her face now. She's 2 laptops. She doesn't know what screen to look at, but I'm on track. The wind this spring and winter in Melbourne has been extraordinary.
Yes, although it's looking, momentarily it looks like it's going to be shaping up, and then it's back on it again.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I did a show here on the Spectrum, and I had my son Rory with me, and Rory's 8, and afterwards I took him to a park in Glen Huntly, which is one of the most expensive parks here in Melbourne. I think it costs about $10 billion to build it. But it's got this amazing water feature right in the middle, so kids can take their bathers and run in and out. And of course, Rory's fully dressed, and there's all these parents there going, oh, sorry, because it was so hot yesterday. Oh, sorry, no, you haven't got your bathers. And I just said to Rory, just go for it, man. So he went in clothes and all. And,
nice.
He had a great time.
That's it.
And I got a bit sunburned.
That's what it's about, isn't it?
It is about that.
It's about having a good time. Why can't you run around in your clothes? I mean, seriously?
They get wet. I just then folded them up when I got home and put them in his drawer because they were washed.
Well, it was so windy, I would have thought he'd dry out on the way to the car. At least
He did, in fact.
Yeah.
So, but again, coming back to what we were talking about, it's like, feeling your passion. And, if your passion is getting in the water, I'm not going to stand in your way. So I have a question for you, Rob.
Only one, thank goodness.
Of many, but this one is very well positioned because it's quite spontaneous. Yet it's superbly researched and about to be executed on this show. Rob Hartnett, what excites you?
Many, many things. In particular, what excites me is other people get me excited. Other people who are passionate, people who love what they do, whatever it is, it could be work or whatever they're interested in, excites me. So I think it's human too. I think we get excited by others who get excited, and we can get motivated by that as well. So I think that's what excites me. Are you excited all the time? No, but
you die.
But you just go crazy. But yeah, that excites me. I think doing things that are interesting with people that are really with interesting people. That's an exciting thing to do.
Yes, quite often I get asked, what is it about people that you want to work with? Doesn't it drain you? Doesn't it? No. I said, it's like It's like people that are into cars and they pop the bonnet and they go, oh, yeah, look at the diff and look at the la. Or, Christmas
Sorry,
yo-yo.
the diff was on the butt of the bonnet.
I don't know.
Engineers out there, take note.
You see, I know nothing about cars,
Yeah.
but I do know about people, and it is like unwrapping a
It is.
present. You don't know what's inside, but it's exciting to know what might be there. And I was reading one of your blog posts the other day, and you were in Sydney recently, and you had one of those moments. Do you want to tell me about that?
Yeah. I was up there to do a meeting, and I'm taking a meeting with a large financial institution, and that's good. But I knew the meeting was going to be tough.
Yes.
I knew there were some people who were bought into what I was going to talk about. There were some people who were, actually quite excited about, and there was a whole lot who were just on the fence, just not, just what we call kind of even keel.
You were going to have to manage some expectations.
It was going to be a tough meeting, and with these people that kind of what I would see was fairly obvious, but they couldn't see, or weren't motivated to see, or really couldn't care less whether they did or they didn't. And I think there was a lot of that in there. So it wasn't that great a meeting to look forward to. And beside me at this cafe, while I was researching and preparing for the meeting, there was a couple of young guys, and they started just a meet and greet and brought their laptops and gear along, and then they started getting more animated and more excited, and I couldn't help but notice it. And being a father of two creatives,
a voyeur by the sounds of it,
two filmmakers basically. So
yes.
I'm used to seeing filmmaking and photography for my oldest two. I noticed the guys were going through a photo shoot, and they were so excited. It turns out one was a photographer and one owned a clothing brand, and they were so excited about what they'd created, and they were so passionate about what it was going to look like in store and how they could modify this photograph and do some Photoshop here and build this up. And it was just, as I was listening to these guys going, and you couldn't help because they were high-fiving and almost yelling at each other. But half the cafe could hear them. I started thinking, wow, isn't it, how passionate are these guys? Yes. Am I that passionate about this meeting coming up?
You wanted to bottle something of what they had.
So what can I do about this meeting? And so what excites me about this meeting I'm about to go to? And there was some things in there. And I think one of the things that's really important here was not to think about the people that were on the fence or not really wanting to get involved, but actually be excited for the people in the 25% of my audience I calculated that were excited and wanted to do that. What could I do that could help them? Because they were excited and they were bringing me in. And I think that's really important. And I heard a really big motivational speaker in the US was asked a question, and he said, someone said to him, "Do you get upset at all when some of your audience isn't participating?" He goes, "No, haven't done that for 30 years. Don't even worry about them." And I said, "Don't you try and get everyone on board?" And he goes, "No, some people just can't. So you've just got to focus on the ones who are really excited and want to be and are listening to what you're talking about. Because if you don't and you focus on the other ones, you're letting the other guys down. They're already dialed in, and they're going, what about us over here? You keep focusing on trying to motivate. Forget that."
And also, if you think excitement and engagement is contagious, most likely those excited people will infect the not so engaged people and bring them along.
Correct.
As well.
And that was a part of the blog. So part of the blog I wrote about was on LinkedIn if anyone's connected. But part of the blog was to say, okay, so the bit that excited me was how I could help that 25% in the room get the 50% on the fence. Don't worry about the 25% or 30% or whatever it happens to be who were not interested and probably going to be negative. But the ones on the fence are the ones you want to go for. Because if you can get the 25% motivated and say 50% on the fence, if you can get that over the line, suddenly you got 75%. And that's a whole different conversation. So the point really about it was, what am I excited about in this next meeting? What am I excited about, or what could I be excited about, and bring that passion to this next meeting?
And how did it go?
It went really well. So I changed what I was going to do. So I basically had a few PowerPoint slides, dumped those completely, and just went what I'd call old school. So we just sat down there, shot the breeze, pulled out some materials, talked about them, and talked about their issues, and just literally I started working with them like I was already engaged. And so not that I was pitching or anything like that, but I was already working with them on a basis of if this doesn't work, well, we're probably not right for each other anyway.
Well, that's bringing that authenticity to the table, isn't it? And not being contrived. And again, human beings sense it.
Yes.
We sense authenticity.
Oh, we can smell it a mile away when it's not authentic.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's where people don't believe you. It doesn't matter how shiny it is and how great your PowerPoint presentation is. If it's not believed, then you're not going to get the engagement and the buy-in.
Correct.
I use storytelling as as my probably main communication tool.
Yep, it's the best way.
People love it.
We react to it. We're all storytellers, and we've all got stories that have been told to us, or ones that we can tell. And as long as the story is connected to the theme or they can relate to it, that's the absolute best way of getting the message across. is through great stories.
It's been happening for thousands of years, thousands and thousands. I mean, look at the Three Bears, Rob. Still getting trolled out, isn't it?
We're still going to do it. Yeah, stories are the way to go. But the art of storytelling. As is getting that right and getting that succinct.
Yes. So everyone, tell a story, especially with your kids.
Tell more stories. Tell them with your kids. Yeah.
Yes, it's a way. You can bypass discipline by telling a story, rather than telling your children what to do. Use a story.
Yeah, and get them to tell you a story. But then you have to be a good listener, which is a seldom taught skill.
Well, that's right. A good one is the prodigal son, for anyone that's got a son that might not behaving.
I'll have to read it 3 times.
Now, Rob, we talk a lot about success and when things go right and, we have clear objectives and we head for them. And in business, you would see this a lot, especially with teams and leaders, that whole carrot and stick approach. We know what we want to achieve, now get to it. And if you don't achieve that, then that's where we start building those narratives around failure as well. How do you think, in your experience, this affects the human condition, especially around when we're talking about mental health issues?
I think it can work in a positive way. I've also seen it work in a negative way on both sides. So I've seen compensation or carrot and stick work well, and I've also seen it work poorly. I think the overall thing to be reminded of is a journey. And I had the privilege of sitting with a large company in the US and talking to their global sales leader. And he said, it's not one answer or the other. He said, I'm always turning the dial up. Sometimes I need to go more stick. Sometimes I need to go more carrot. And it depends on what we're doing. But I always explain why we're doing it and what we're doing. And once that's understood, it's a lot easier. But sometimes you're just watching. It's like seasonality. If you're introducing a new product, you might need to have a bit of stick out there to get the team to actually start talking about it, because it might be the survival of the organisation. Other times you might want to use carrot because with a certain group of people and not others. So it's about understanding your teams, understanding your people, and using the right incentives at the right time.
And would that include onboarding the right people into your organisation as well? Because great salespeople don't necessarily thrive in certain environments or cultures.
Well, it's a really interesting point. But what makes a great salesperson? So we talked about being interested and interesting, but it really depends on what they're selling. And I've got clients that have excellent salespeople, but they are very, very different. For example, those people who are in retail and selling are very different personalities that are selling medical services to surgeons. They're both great salespeople, but you wouldn't want to swap those people around.
Well, one's very transactional, isn't it? And then the other...
One's transactional, but one's also transactional. You have to get on. You have to gauge people's attention. They're coming in, respond to demands. Other one is you're working with a surgeon. It's very detailed. It's very technical. You need specifics. You need to spend more time with them. And you need to be able to go one-on-one with whoever your industry is. So if you're selling to professional services, to accountants, to lawyers and the like, you need people who match that.
Yes.
Right? And the same thing with medical, the same thing with retail, the same thing with telco or IT. It's what is the kind of ideal makeup of the salesperson you need? And
yes, because you don't necessarily want to build a relationship with the person that sells you lipstick. Whereas if you're investing more time and money into, say, a service like, your accountant or your lawyer, then that's imperative that you have that relationship.
Yeah. So there's a number of basic things you need to have, but the people themselves can be a very different makeup. It's the same with people who are initially what we call business development. In other words, they might get the first sale across the line.
Yes.
But key account managers, those who manage the account and the relationship later on, they're typically a different makeup of people.
Yes.
They do different things. Usually the business development people get bored really quickly once they've won the account because the thrill of the chase isn't there. So if you know your team, you map your team to their skill sets and what they do well and what they're passionate about, they can be very, very successful.
Yes. Well, what are they, the farmers and the...
Well, traditionally it's called hunters and farmers. Hunters and farmers. Yeah. It's a very blended now.
Yes.
I think what's actually happening in sales, though, one of the big things that is happening with technology and the like is that a lot of salespeople aren't in fact salespeople, they're just order takers.
Yes.
So they're just, you and I want to buy something. We know the brand. We've done our research online. We just want someone to take the order. Well, reality is they, in fact, are order takers. And we could actually, if we could buy it online, we would. So if you've just got a team of order takers, that's going to be a big transitional challenge for them going forward. But if you're truly selling, in other words, I can answer questions. I can give you, talk to you about thought leadership, give you direction, give you advice early on. then that's a whole different. That's selling. That's very different than purely taking the order.
That's right. But if you're going to take the order, take it well.
Take it well. Then take it well and service.
Because it is the difference between the customer remaining as a customer or going elsewhere as well. So any point of engagement is a kind of selling, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so what's happening is the blend of what we call customer. You're seeing things like customer experience officers now.
Yes.
You're getting customer service and sales coming together. And that's the big thing I'm doing at the moment is leadership understanding that both of those things. And the key point is this, that more sales does not necessarily drive more service, but more service will always drive more sales.
Yes. We were talking about that the other day in a restaurant. My son, he's a chef, and
is this Rory?
No, he's only
He's 8.
Yeah, George is 19.
Oh, thank you.
No, he's a chef, and I can excuse not great food, but I cannot excuse bad service. And in fact, great service that takes care of the bad food almost elevates that level of engagement and willingness to re-engage again.
It is such a difference. We react to it. And, I was just at a cafe that my wife and I go to quite a lot this morning, and it is in a sea of cafes. A street would have at least 12 cafes in it. And this one is consistently packed, not because they do the coffee any better, not because they do the food any better, but the customer service, their recognition of you, your name, they get you the extra seat when you have to, they find the extra table when they have to. That level differentiates them from the other 12.
Yes.
And the difference in profitability and the difference for that owner of that business when he sells it is unbelievable.
And that's the feeling of being cared for again that we talked about before.
Well, and also from a leadership and a mindset point of view, he's obviously a great leader, and I don't know which of the owners it is, but he's a great leader and a great motivator because his team are consistently smiling, consistently happy, consistently wanting to do more than and go above and beyond.
Yes,
the entire team.
Which is a flow and effect to the customer as well.
Which just goes to the customer and the whole thing goes full circle.
Yeah. Smile a bit more, people.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. In fact, it's actually better.
And it doesn't take that much more energy to care. As we were talking about authenticity, that really authentic caring. And if you don't care, it's okay, but don't put yourself in the environment.
No, exactly right.
Because you don't know what's going on for somebody else. You know, that whole iceberg analogy.
Yep.
What you see at the tip, you've got no idea what's going on for somebody, and your negative attitude could impact somebody in a way that is...
I think that's right. And I think it also gets back to that earlier question you asked me about passion. And I think that if you do try what I said about getting excited for meetings and you just can't do it, don't feel down yourself. It might be time for a change. It might be, you might be doing something. And in sales, people ask me, you've been in sales is it hard? And I'd say, look, I don't think I've been, and I've thought a lot about this, I don't think I've ever sold anything I didn't 120% believe in, that I wouldn't have sold to my closest relative or friend. So therefore, selling is not hard for me. I'm excited when people want to have what I've got because I believe in it. But if you're not in that role, if you're selling something you don't believe in, you wouldn't sell it to your best friend.
Yes.
Then that point in time, that's starting to abrasive. Or I should say, it starts to get abrasive with your values. You can only get away with that for a certain amount of time, and then suddenly you're going to wake up one morning and go, you know what, I can't.
Yes.
Try and get excited. If you can't get excited, just think why is that?
But it's a hard thing to sustain, especially in that space, isn't it? Because typically the sales cycle is a monthly thing where you're only as good as your last month a lot of the time. So how would you see some of the challenges around, the pressure and seduction in this sales space around achievement and excellence?
Communication. A lot of sales cycles I work with on clients, some are out 2-3 years, some are 1 month, like you talked about. And in that case the actual real pressure I find is not so much of the salespeople, but the sales leaders. Sales leaders turn over about every 3 months if they can't make it happen.
Yes.
So the leadership is incredibly important, but communication of what you're doing. And with salespeople, not confusing activity with achievement. Just because I'm fixing problems or I'm sorting something out and therefore I'm not doing that. But if you're talking to your leader and your leader of leaders about the activity you're doing, involving them in what you're doing, you'll be great. What people don't like is the lone wolves who are kind of not talking to anybody, not communicating, and either sometimes they'll hit their number, sometimes they won't. But you never know what month it's going to be.
Is that because they're just pursuing the number?
They're just pursuing the number. They're at any cost sometimes, and that costs brand, and sometimes at any cost of the customer, or they're trying to sell something to me to target that week or that month, and be it a car or a phone system, it doesn't matter what it is. When they're actually truly thinking, is this the right thing for the customer? But I always find that behaviour is symptomatic of what the leadership's wanting.
Yes.
If the leadership is looking for high, what we call NPS scores or customer sat scores over a long period of time, then let's let the team not push that extra part. So maybe it's having incentive schemes that are quarterly, not monthly.
Yes.
At HP, we used to have a profit share for everybody in the organisation got the same percentage of their salary, no matter if they were the president, right,
Yes.
or you just joined as a grad.
Yeah.
You got the same percentage as an annual. And so what that did, it drove incredible team collaboration. I'm not sure if it's there now, but when I was certainly there, it allowed everyone would pitch in. We would all help each other because, it's a good culture like that. But Bill and Dave, who started Hewlett-Packard, it's Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, that's what they put in the 60s. That's how they worked.
Yeah, and that builds that parity, doesn't it? And that's not for those lone wolves that you were talking about. That weeds people out like that. That will go off and enter into an organisation that better suits the profile.
Yeah, lone wolves didn't really survive in HP. No. They might be there for a little time, but usually, to your point, a really great one you made earlier, it's making sure you're hiring the right people in the first place.
Oh, well, one of my favourite people in the world is Craig Howard. He's the dealer principal at Mercedes-Benz in Berwick.
Yep.
And I watch that's a very, very tough industry, selling cars, especially those kinds of cars. Yep. But watching how he motivates his people, and he wins dealership of the year in, year out, and that's because number one, he gets the right people, and the way he manages them and keeps them motivated is through that authentic leadership. He's extremely present. He's very clear in his own objectives, and also clarifies theirs as well. And I recently spoke at one of their roundtable leadership conferences where basically gets out the kid gloves and cares for each person individually as a group and creates such clear objectives that are decided by the team. This whole, and you're talking about collaboration, that we're all deciding on what happens here. So they want to go there even when it's tough. They still want to turn up for it because they want to do it for him.
Absolutely. And Craig does run a good show.
You know Craig?
I'm well aware of the business.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. We can talk about that offline perhaps. Now, can you believe, Rob, we're coming up to the end of the show and it's just been...
Has that been 2 hours already?
I wish. I could ask Ken Lyons to go home, but I can't really because next up is the divine Ken Lyons with his program, His Health, and his special guest today, her name is Anne-Marie Manders, and Warratina Lavender Farm is her farm. She shares that with her husband, and it's right at the foothills of the Dandenongs here in Melbourne in the beautiful Yarra Valley, and it's a family business. They take a lot of pride in producing homegrown lavender products. Don't mind a bit of lavender. What's your take on it?
I like the colour.
Okay, she is listening, and so be kind.
I like the whole thing about lavender.
Yes, apart from the smell.
If I could buy a lavender farm, I would buy one.
Oh, really? Well, we could ask Anne-Marie if she wouldn't mind selling it.
Yes, we'll discuss terms.
Anne-Marie, you have a sale. Now, I always say at the end of my show also, Rob, even though we've been having a whale of a time, some of the topics that we do talk about can bring up feelings for people, and especially a lot of our community who listen in Whitehorse, Burundara, sometimes are a bit isolated. So if you're having feelings where you need that little bit of extra support, do not hesitate. Phone Lifeline 131114. That's 131114. Or suicide callback service. You don't have to be suicidal. You might be worried about somebody else. That number is 1300 659 467. And of course, emergency services 000. You're not going to get into trouble if somebody hasn't died. So I'm not an alarmist, but I'm also a realist that these things do happen. So what's next for you, Rob? You're off to Brisbane.
Yeah, Melbourne tomorrow, then Brisbane this week, up to sunny Brisbane. So running a workshop up there.
Oh, sweaty Brisbane.
No, it's very nice up there.
So do you tailor your workshops like you make bespoke programs for your customers?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, every program I do, whether it's even on fundamentals, is always bespoke to the audience I'm with and the audience industry, and as much as I can to the audience's challenges that they have on the day. I think that's really important. I mean, I authentically can't do it any other way. I've been told that I overdo my presentations and think too much and I should just run the same ones out. I just can't do it. It's not the way I do it.
How would you go with that? You know, you just...
Yeah, I think there's fundamentals, but no, I know they're always tailored to what people want.
But it makes it so much more enjoyable for you.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it, when everything's different?
I would get bored.
That's right. That's right. Rolling the same thing out time after time.
Yeah.
I think, in our industries, we do feel like sometimes we are in an echo chamber because we are repeating a lot of, key philosophies and strategies or whatever it might be that are pertinent in our industry. So we have to mix it up a bit and make it meaningful for
I think keeping contemporary is really important. And I think that's one of the great things about having, family, and certainly now is having, my kids and one I'm involved in business with as well. I mean, getting their views as millennials and working the way they do is kind of a lot of fun, to be honest. And it is challenging sometimes.
Do you have to resist the temptation to overstep the mark as a parent and not as a business
Sometimes
associate?
you can do that, but also you're just learning the way they think and the way they go about business. And that's a really interesting challenge, but it keeps us fresh and it keeps us alive.
Yes. And I think that's really important. But it must be, we don't have a lot of time to go into it, but yes, working with family can be very challenging as well.
Yeah, it can be, but some of the times they're the best ways of doing it, and I'm seeing more and more family businesses as well, and I think that's good. When I was listening to more family businesses, I go, oh, it's not just me, and I actually think that's a genuine message for everybody, that we put so much stuff on ourselves, we judge ourselves.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.